Hello.
Hey, Eric.
Hey Nicole, how are you?
Good. How about you?
Doing well. Hey Alex, everybody.
Uh, everyone.
Okay. Expecting a few more people to join. Oh, here we go. And I now have to manually let in anybody who's not in the NIH instance. So that's why you guys have a lobby. I don't know why. Super annoying, but
Is that true for all meetings or just this one? Or is that a new
no,
NIH
for all
Teams
of them.
thing?
So yeah, anything I use the NIH instance for.
Oh, that is good to know.
Yeah. Hey, Renska.
Hi. Hey, Super Mario's here too. No offense to the rest of you.
We all don't have as cool nicknames, so we're gonna have to work on that. Paper because she just emailed.
Are you able to hear me okay?
I think we're done. Let me paper real quick. She wanted to talk about the table. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and we'll get recording. Or did you already start recording, Michelle?
I think you did earlier.
Oh, okay. Well, either way.
Good job.
Like we're set. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Piper had the suggestion of starting with the survey table just to make sure we had some time for it. And I think given some of the feedback we're getting on the proposal, that would be good if maybe we did the first part on that and then switch over to you, Stephanie, if that's okay. All right, so let me go ahead and share. Hopefully you can see my screen. actually really had to dig around to find this because they don't want people referring to 6.0 anymore, so they took it off the list of models. But I was able to find an issue for creating the survey table. And so that's where this is. I can go ahead, before I forget, let me grab the link and give it the chance. Let's look at this in detail.
Nicole, just to confirm, is it the same table? Because I think that was the survey conduct table, or we had a couple of them.
My understanding from this is that this is the survey conduct table, and the reason we've been talking about being interested in it, and I think we can see here at first glance, is because it does contain a lot of the metadata that we've been talking about adding to the observation. And of course, a concern with that has been overloading the observation table. And so I've not wanted to dig into it until I had some more information, but I haven't been able to get anybody to speak to that. So I figured it's time we dug into it because, again, that concern repeats itself. And this does look like it covers a lot of the things we've been saying we would like to include. They do have some suggestions for the observation table, and then and the concept table, and then give some examples. There we go, got Piper. And then give some examples of what it would look like. But as best as I can tell, all of the documentation for this is basically this issue. I have not been able to find out anything else for it. It's possible, one of the things we could do is the people who are working on this, information is here. We could certainly reach out if we wanted to get some more information, but I think we probably have enough documented in the table to be able to discuss.
So just want to clear our
Nicole, do you want me
understanding.
the link to the spec still seems to be online?
I'm sorry, say that you both were talking. So what was?
So I was saying the survey conduct table is a place to store the metadata about the survey, but actual survey response is placed in the observation. So whatever questions and response to that question was recorded in the observation table, the reference to that row can be linked back into the survey conduct table to say this survey took place at this visit on this date, and the survey was transportation barrier question, or various different well curated survey that people are using in the field. Is everyone clear with that understanding?
Yeah, and it makes sense, and it also plugs in well to what we've been talking about doing the question answer pair in the observation table in the current proposal. So I think this would integrate quite well with what's being proposed now. It just, again, like you said, Stephanie, helps us unload the metadata from the observation table to the survey conduct table. Alexander, was there something you wanted to add? You had started to speak as well.
Well, I wanted to propose to share the link, but I see that Ransky already did it. There is actually the page on the GitHub pages still alive.
Oh, okay.
So you can.
Thank you.
Should
Yeah,
go
because
through
all I could find was this issue, which I posted before, but that's helpful. Let me.
Yeah, and so
Oh,
the
thank
link
you.
I posted is to the actual survey conduct, and the one that you were showing before was the survey table.
Okay. So
Just to keep
the
it,
conduct is kind of what it evolved to? Was that just an earlier iteration in the issue?
Well, I think the conduct is that what it says here, used to store an instance of a completed survey or questionnaire. And I thought the survey table was like the metadata table.
Okay, I guess what I'm thinking is that they're the same things, like the instance of the survey and the metadata associated with that is the same thing.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah. But this is better for discussing it.
Is there a link to the actual survey table? Did you say there's two? There's the survey conduct and survey?
Yeah, so this is the survey conduct, and then I posted the link above Renska's link is the link to the issue I was looking at, and this is what was in the issue is the survey table. But
Okay.
it looks like there's a lot of overlapping variables.
Yeah, this doesn't look like a metadata table because it's got like a survey start and end time as
Yeah.
well. So
And that's what then this one has those two, and then start date time.
I think it got confusing for many folks because when they meant survey conduct, it's really the metadata about the survey, not actual survey question that was asked. to
Right. And we do have the potential of using this and calling it something else if we feel like that's more clear, like survey metadata. Hopefully Alexander was able to join us again. It looks like he got kicked out. I tried to readmit him, but I don't know if it worked.
So I think the name evolved from the to specify that this survey was conducted for this participant at this date. And the little information about these surveys are like what kind of survey it was and what it was administered and who, if provider, assisted with this survey,
Yeah, that's
etc. So
somewhere.
yeah, and the selection could have been, it could be an online form, or it could actually be a paper form
assisted
that they
source.
fill out. Yeah, or it could be a healthcare provider helping actual patient to answer these questions. So it could have been all different ways to collect that survey data. So the survey conduct table was to describe how that survey data was collected. So it's not actually about the survey questions and answer, but
Right.
how it was conducted and which visit it was and which observation record it links to. So if you want to provide like all that linkage, you could also use the fact relationship table. Probably Alex could help me explain that more, but the relationship table could specify all these different things relating to that, between survey conduct and data that exists in different domains.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I I agree that it'd be nice to unload this from observation because it tends to get used a lot. And again, it lines up with how we've talked about using observation for the question answer pair.
Yeah, so
So-
even in version 6, there is an actual survey table, only survey conduct table. So
Right.
survey table actually doesn't exist, but it's the survey conduct which houses the metadata associated with the survey.
And I think that makes sense in the sense that we are trying to find a way to integrate survey data into the common data model as it is without necessarily adding additional tables, but also this does seem to be a table that would work with what we've already talked about doing, but give us a place for the metadata outside of the observation table. So I don't know, do we want to just go through the variables and see if we like all of them? Do we want to, I don't know, we could also check it at some point, maybe not during the call, check it against the things we've listed as metadata in the proposal, and see if there's anything missing. Also, just general discussion. Does anybody think it's a bad idea to look into using the survey conduct table, even if we rename it? Let's see, I think Craig, your hand was up first.
Yeah, just a quick clarification. So this would be just for the survey metadata. Everything else, as far as the question responses, would still go into the observation table and the clinical facts into where they go respectively. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, let me add one more thing. When we say survey, it's like pretty. So we've been discussing a lot what the definition is and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But survey here in this specific table is not just like one instrument, right? It
Right.
is actually the group of the instruments, right? So something that is the overarching type of whatever concept, right? So it's not just like a set. Well, it could be a set of question and answer pairs, right? But this is exactly the point. This is not about the actual question asked. This is about the survey instrument that was used. That is why there is only high level metadata, the overarching metadata for the entire instrument.
But that'd be on an individual basis. You'd have an instance here for every time the survey is given to each individual person each time. So it's not going to be one row per survey. It would be one row per every time that survey is conducted.
Correct.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. But it's not going to be the per question and answer
Right.
question asked. Yep.
Yeah, it'd be the overall collective instrument that all of those questions belong to.
Mm-hmm. You know, and relative to the definition interest, one of the things we'll talk about the workshop is sort of moving to discussing these things as SAIs instead of surveys, so we can quit having to redefine what all that includes. So that's something we'll discuss at the workshop, I think. Piper, do you want to go ahead? And if you're talking,
Yeah. So, as I'm looking at this table and I'm just kind of going through this and highlighting the fields right now, I copied it into Excel. So this looks a little bit like it has procedure related detail, right? So this is the administration procedure. So things like the date on which the survey was started and ended, right? Is that sort of the procedure start and end date? Does that sound right? Let's see. So I see a mix of go ahead, Alexander.
Except it's not the intervention, right? So question is the patient is asked some questions. So how is it? What context is missing? So procedure, you're saying procedural context, but how is it different to what you would expect?
Yeah, there's a mix. So so this table is totally new to me. So I'm just now looking at it. But I think maybe a first step would be for us to go through each of these fields and see sort of what aspect of the survey is being captured by each field. Because the survey start and end date time, that to me looks like we're talking about the procedure of administering the instrument, right? Although
I don't think so. Probably this is the information about how the patient was how the survey was conducted, right? So the temporal context, the the time and context, the collection method, so all the sort of things. So exactly how the survey was conducted.
So you're saying how long it took the person to complete the survey, or if it's something, if it's an observational survey where a clinician is observing the patient, you're saying it might refer to, for example, an entire nursing shift, or it might refer to a single incident, right? So it's, you're saying this is more about the sample of behavior when that sample is being collected. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. It looks like that.
Okay, because I mean, there's so many different surveys or types of these instruments, so it could refer to a lot of different things. Do you know what the collection method is intended to refer to? There's not much of a definition here.
Stephanie, you were saying what that was.
Yeah, so collection method could be a participant coming into a clinic and answering these questions on a paper form or an online form that someone is helping to fill out. Or it could be just the online form that they get a link to at home and they could fill out. So they're, and then if, you know, they're, they could be given a sheet of paper for them to fill out on their own without any help from the providers. So there could be multiple ways. And I think there is a column where you specify which method was used.
Yeah, which is one of the things we'd said we wanted to be able to collect.
So, okay, so I could envision this referring to a couple different things. So there's collection method, you know, pen and paper versus, you know, computerized adaptive testing versus are you the provider? Think about like the Glasgow Coma scale, right? Where a clinician is observing the patient and then recording responses. So I could see it referring to that, right?
There's
or
also respondent type. I wonder if that's.
Yep. So to me, that's an attribute. I think that we're conflating a couple of different features of the instrument. So I think we would definitely want to be clear. Because I see, so Stephanie, you were just talking about whether they were assisted or not. And I do see there's a discrete field in this table for whether there was assistance, with or without assistance. So I would say, I think we just want to be really clear about the discrete attributes or metadata, right? And what's metadata versus what's an intrinsic piece of the instrument. So things like instruments for children, a lot of times they'll be the child self-report, the teacher report, the parent report, right? So that's the respondent. And to me, that's clear, right? And then I think you also have like an indirect and a direct respondent. So in some cases where the clinician is asking the patient a whole bunch of questions, the direct respondent, the person who's actually scoring, right, the question or item on the response is the clinician themselves. They're asking the person a question. The person responding to the questions is the indirect respondent. The direct respondent is the clinician because they're actually providing the response on the instrument itself. So that piece to me is pretty clear. And I don't think we want to conflate respondent with collection method, right? So I would say, and Nicole, I don't want to hijack your meeting. So here's something I'm just going to throw out and you tell me if this is something we want to table for a later date. But it seems like it might be worth going through each of these fields and making sure we have a really clear definition about what's being captured by each of these, what was intended to be captured by these fields, and then maybe talk about whether we think that's an important piece to have somewhere in either the CDM or, I mean, you know, you and I talked about this offline before, that some of these pieces of information are best captured as part of the vocabulary, right? Part of the semantic model of the instrument or the question. And some are better captured by the information model, which is the CDM itself. So I'll stop. I'll just throwing that out there, and then I defer to the rest of the group about next steps or how we want to handle this.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Piper. And I agree. I do want to make sure we allow enough time for Stephanie to present, but I do think we need a more in-depth conversation and basically, yeah, get the definition specific, make sure we're in agreement as to what the definition of each variable is. If we want all of these, if there's other ones we want to add, things like that. And we definitely need more time to do that. But I think this gives us all a chance to start thinking about it before our next meeting. You know, I could also potentially just put this into Google Docs, and then people can comment like we're doing with the proposal itself. And that might help keep the conversation going, because I suspect it'll take more time than we have left in meetings before the workshop, and then see where we are at that point. Mario, though, you did have your hand up, so I wanted to let you go before we switched over to Stephanie.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that maybe the information kept here in the respondent type can also be used in the type concept ID in the observation and measurement. So there is this patient-filled survey, for example, and maybe there are other vocab already capturing similar things. And I'm just thinking about what information people interested in using PROMS data alongside normal EHR data so are really interested in. So do they really need all this meta information? And I think one thing I would be interested in is rather have a full understanding of exactly which questions were asked and what responses were possible to choose from. And that's something that is, I don't think, captured here directly.
Right.
So there we have this problem again with what do we do when somebody records none of the above. There we need to have information about what are the above. So I think for me, more important than these things would be where do we store the information that is really needed to interpret the scores that we want to use for the analytics.
Yeah, I just want to add to that what he said. So when we add data into the OMAP CDM, we often capture the type concept ID to indicate the provenance of the data, the diagnosis for a patient health situation could come from actual EHR data in the hospital enterprise system, or it could have been captured through a insurance data, like a claims data, or it could have been from CMS data, Medicaid care data. So there is a type concept ID to indicate the provenance of the data, where it came from. So by enumerating the list of possible lists for the survey, it might help people understand, what's the provenance, what are the types that we would use, and versus what are the collection method we use to capture these data. When it was like, for example, Montreal Cognitive Scale tests, you have like a number of words that are spoken by the healthcare provider, and the patient is supposed to take some time to listen to those words and recall what those words were 5 minutes later, and then they get to write down how many they actually correctly were able to recall those words, and they have to take the whole test within 10 minutes, how many how long did they take to draw a clock on a piece of paper with, a particular time, and that type of all those memory functions, and those are part of that MoCA survey instrument. So those are all collected and put it in the observation. But the information about the Montreal Cognitive Assessment Survey that took place goes into the survey conduct table. And, we could possibly take an example of that form and iterate, what are the enumerated types of lists that we could put in the type concept to indicate the provenance, or what kind of the list of things that we want to indicate in the collection method types. So we, by explaining and running an example list might help everyone understand how we use these fields within these tables.
Yeah, and I do think one of the, oh, go ahead, Piper.
Oh, I was just going to say, Stephanie, thank you so much for clarifying that. That makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of pieces, and I'm seeing that in our flow sheet data with the assessments. There are a lot of additional pieces of information that are routinely collected each time certain assessments, not all of them, but certain assessments are administered. And I'm seeing it so consistently in so many different flow sheets that it seems that it's really clinically important, right? When it comes to interpreting the final score or answers. So, and that's not something I'd ever really thought about, us needing to figure out how to collect. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yes, these concepts were all very foreign to me, a few years back when my mother got sick and she had an AFib and had a stroke and got admitted and then discharged to rehab and then eventually to, assisted living, the nurse came in and said, "Oh, I have to do this MoCA test." Like, what do you mean a MoCA test? So she showed me a piece of paper and I was like, "Oh, this is what they've been talking about when they say MoCA." So it clarified a lot of things when I actually saw them doing the test with my mother. But to help people, I actually put an example of PDFs that we used in the survey instruments for the AI Ready group, so that they could actually see the PDF form of the survey that we used.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say that too. At some point, there's a level of data that's just going to have to be like a link to the survey or things like there's only so much information we can get into OMOP tables. I think, good documentation for the survey in general is important. And relative, Piper, to what you're saying about what captures in the vocabulary, I think one of the challenges there is there's a lot of good metadata in the vocabulary for the psychometric instruments. I think it may be less so for other standard instruments. So it'll be interesting to see this discussion evolve. But I'm glad we started it today. We'll continue it. Like I said, I think what I'll do is I'll pop this into an Excel file in the Google Documents, and we can kind of continue the discussion asynchronously until we have our next meeting. But I think I want to give Stephanie some time since she volunteered to share with us some more details about what they've been doing with AI Ready. So Stephanie, I'll go ahead and stop sharing and let you take over.
Too many things up on my screen. So you asked about sharing how we're capturing the actual retinal image device used to get to collect various different imaging studies within the AI Ready. That's just a very small portion. I don't know if I need to go over the other overall picture or just concentrate on this particular use case?
Maybe just because I don't know how many people have been here for some of the other AI ready discussions. Maybe just a quick overview of AI ready and then into the specific use case.
Okay, so let me open up the other one.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you switch. I heard like a couple sentences about AI ready.
Okay, so the AI ready DGP group, they call it Salutogenesis, and this is a part of Bridge to AI consortium where we're collecting various different multimodal data to make the data available for AI use. So in Salutogenesis, we used various different standard survey instruments, and we created our own collection of those survey instruments into a RedCap survey data form, and we use that to collect data across 4,000 participants who agreed to enroll for this study. And so it's a various different screening tools that includes MoCA, Montreal Cognitive Assessment Measurement, the eye vision care, as well as various different survey that talks about these type of various different categories. There is diabetic care, demographics, there is SDOH type of data, the CSD-10 depression scale, and so there are various different information that were collected. The reason for this is to collect data that are often found outside of the EHR data, so we find more complete holistic journey of the patient's disease, type 2 diabetic disease condition. So it's not just EHR data, but everything else that happened outside of the EHR data. So when we map these survey data, basically there are 3 categories of mapping that you use. If the data is very straightforward and we were able to map to a concept in OMA vocabulary table, we just map them. So example here is marital status, troponin T. We'll just measure it based on what we find in the OMA vocabulary table, and we map these questions to particular, like if the lab results or demographic information map to a particular concept we find. And then there are times where questions that are being asked aren't necessarily captured within the OMA vocabulary table. Things like worrying about the future and possibility of serious complication. How often have you been treated unfairly by teachers and professors because of your race and ethnic group? Like, we can find these concepts within the OMA vocabulary table. So what we did was we created a custom ID for them, so we could capture them, clearly via a number. And then there were questions where there was a question. Example here is, has a doctor or other healthcare provider professional ever told you that you have the following condition? And so you have a list of response where you say yes or no. But then these are not just question concept we have to map, but we also have to map the question and the answer response together as an item, right? So if they say, yes, I was told that I have type 2 diabetes, then both the question and answer pair, we will need to record it in the observation domain. But at the same time, we also have to record the fact that they were diagnosed with diabetes, but that particular diagnosis of the diabetes weren't necessarily from an EHR data, but it was self-reported, right? So we will state the provenance of that data source as a self-reported data, not from an EHR data, but it will also go into the condition saying I have type 2 diabetes. So those are the broad 3 categories of data that we we had to map. Does anyone have any questions so far? Sorry, my quick description is not so quick because you have to describe all these different use cases, right? So when we capture these data, the survey data, we basically capture the survey form, the source of data in this way. And then we basically generated what that question mapped to in terms of target, whether we use existing concept ID or custom one that we created to indicate the fact that it wasn't in the vocabulary coverage. So we also provided, when we mapped to the existing terms, how confident we were, whether it was an exact match or broad match. And there were qualifier concept. We have to often specify if the test was for the right eye or test was the left eye. We had to indicate it was really for the left only or right only. So we used the qualifier concept to specify and the word that were used in the data, whether it was the actual word left or the right, we kept it in the qualifier source value in case that was important.
Oh,
So that's
Stephanie,
how we kept. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I thought you were done with the slide. There is one question from Eric. I just wanted to make sure he got to ask his question before you moved on too far.
Yeah, I actually want to. We're experiencing some very similar problems with our current data set as well, where we have variables that are like survey like data, but they could also belong in like the observations or like the conditions domain. So we have instances where was the patient able to, did the patient self-report hypoglycemia? Or was the patient able to identify the possible occurrence of diabetic ketoacidosis? So we also have those things too. And I was just interested to see your concept of how you mapped it to both the source and the target. It was from your last slide, I believe.
Last slide. So what I was saying is that when the question was asked and that response to that question result in a actual condition like type 2 diabetes or hypertension, stroke, what we did was to map both the question and answer response that we asked this question and this answer response was captured. We put that into observation domain. But if the response to that question was actually resulting in a particular condition, like you said, hyperglycemia, or in our case, type 2 diabetes. So we also put in the condition, we dual map. So you would have 2 rows for that response. If the answer was yes, resulting in a condition, we also put it in the condition domain and saying that this condition was self-reported. So it's almost a dual map to a survey question that was asked. So we put the actual survey question that was collected, either positive or negative response, and we put that in the observation domain. And then we also put it in the condition.
So do you all have any instances where the condition is present, whether the patient answered yes or no? So I'm just thinking, for example, where they're saying, what we're saying, was the patient able to identify hypoglycemia? Was it self-reported? Either way, we're saying that the hypoglycemic event occurred, but were they able to identify themselves? Like, how would you actually map that? Because it seems like
that's a different question than the patient saying that I have particular condition. Is just saying I was able to identify versus not. So that's just a survey question. So you would you put that in the observation domain, saying that I was able to identify this condition myself. And the provenance of that data, again, is you specify that survey instrument that was used. But if the question itself resulted in actual identifying a condition like dementia or stroke or type 2 diabetes, then what we did was we also mapped that data into the condition domain, saying that this was not from an EHR data set, but from a survey data. And that the distinction, in case the analysts would want to know the distinction, how strong evidence that data was indicated, and they only wanted, let's say, EHR data or claims data where they actually have recorded this condition, and they have the way to filter those out by filtering the provenance type. But then again, if you think about it, ICD-10 is a billing code, right? So it's whether the person actually had that condition or not, it's up to your, sometimes doctors don't specify a particular billing code for a condition because the patient is scared of losing their insurance, type of thing. So, sometimes the doctor will use their, human empathiness to specify certain condition and provide certain diagnosis that, in case there was a scare of that patient losing the health, the insurance in their situation. So you have to, the ICD-10 codes are also a billing code. So I just think that there's a lot of nuance that are presented.
Craig, did you have a question too?
Yeah, I was wondering about how you handled when you moved into the condition table with dates. And I don't know if the next question after, do you have this condition, is when you're diagnosed with it or something like that, or if you're just going with the survey date as the condition start date.
Yes, we use the date the survey was given.
Okay.
Not because this is a condition reported by the patient. So that's the time when we noting this condition as self-reported. So we use the time of the survey that the data collection took place.
Okay, because I know some surveys have, like the next question after, if were you diagnosed, is when were you diagnosed? I was wondering how, if that was the case here, how that'd be handled, but that doesn't sound like that's the case in this question. So that makes sense to use a survey date.
Yeah, there are.
So there are.
Sorry, go ahead.
So there's also nuance of data where you have to say the age at which the certain conditions were diagnosed, right? So we don't necessarily have a good way to capture that right now, right?
Okay.
But there's a way to say history of X, right? And that we have a way to capture that data, because OMAP vocabulary tells you a condition plus the history of. So there's a and the same date you could specify that. So there are ways to capture particular information if you wanted to in the qualifier concept and the qualifier source value. If you want to, if that's really important and you want to capture that information, you could specify that and let the analyst know this is how we put the data in. And I've seen cases where this is a little going out of the case, but when a patient is interacting with a provider, we call that as a visit and we put it in the visit occurrence as that for that encounter. But when a patient is coming in for infusion therapy for 4 weeks, some healthcare system records that encounter as an outpatient, but with 4 weeks long visit duration. We've seen that where you can't have an outpatient clinic visit that are 4 weeks long. That just doesn't make sense. But they do because the doctor ordered that infusion therapy for 4 weeks, and they're coming once every week to get that infusion. So they said, well, that's a 4 weeks long, and so that's how we record it. And I couldn't convince them for the life of me, you can't have an outpatient visit that are 4 weeks long. So you have to, for each EHR system, you have to look at all these different scenarios and kind of clean your data in a way that it makes sense for your analysis. So I just wanted to mention that.
Just a couple of notes of some of the discussion that's ongoing. So, and a nice reminder insert here. So if you are on this call and you have not yet commented on the proposal, please do by the August 27th, because then I'm wanting to collate and work on what still needs to be discussed and use it to help plan what we need to do for the workshop in October. But one of the things that has come up is the specific, to your question, Craig, about what's the date with it. And so there's some views. I had a discussion with Melanie, who's the lead for the Themis group, about it being treated like, has history of, because if you've had it sometime in your life, but not necessarily at the time of the survey, then it's hard to necessarily indicate it with that survey date. There's also been some discussion about treating it like a problem list from an EHR, where these are conditions, again, reported by the participant, that are not necessarily linked to a specific date. There are also surveys that have the option you mentioned, where they do ask age of diagnosis. So the Connect surveys do follow up with, age or year of diagnosis, and then a follow-up question as to if they still have it. So we kind of use that to bracket it. So it is a hot topic of discussion right now about how best to record these. So just to let you know that this is something that's still kind of being considered. And thank you, Stephanie, for talking about how you're handling it with your survey. Piper?
Yeah, so Nicole, that brings up the question I texted you about this morning. So I'm interested in getting Alexander's input on this too, which is, okay, when we use SNOMED concept IDs to encode these things, we can choose from clinical findings, right? The clinical findings concept class, or to your point, Nicole, history of, right? And that comes from the SNOMED semantic type or hierarchy is situation with explicit context. So that captures things like history of uncertainty, right? Like an absence. So no known hallucinations, no history, no cancer, no whatever. So I wonder if, and that ties back to what Claire mentioned about, okay, do you treat these things as history of, which is a situation with an explicit context, or do you treat them as a clinical finding? And I think that kind of gets to the bigger question of, if we put something in the condition table, right, as opposed to the observation table.
You're still sharing your screen. Sorry, Pepper.
Oh,
No problem.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm getting at, Alexander?
Yeah, I think
So
I can follow.
Okay, is our guidance, is Odyssey guidance that what goes in the condition table is necessarily something that's being observed and recorded in the health system versus something that's being reported, right, by the patient? Or
it could be both, right? So we have the provenance, which is the type concept ID, and for the condition, it could be patient reported or recorded from the HR system or whatever survey.
are we putting history? So if a provider is taking patient's history and they're doing social history and family medical history and personal medical history, is our guidance that you would put that in the observation table as history of, or in the condition table with
Right, so
date?
in the observation table, so in that, well, you don't usually have dates. If you have dates, that could go to the condition table, but usually you don't have dates. You just know that it happened in the past. That is why it goes to the observation table. But if you would have dates, then no problem keeping that in the condition table.
Okay, so the guidance would be then, if we have specific dates, then we put it in the condition table. If we don't have specific dates, we put it in the observation table, because the date in the observation table is saying, this is the date that we obtained this observation.
Right.
Right. Whereas condition, if we look at the date of in the condition table, the way we're reading that is, this is the start date of the condition.
I jump in here.
Yes, please.
Because I think we need to approach this from a research perspective as well. That means that when, for example, I'm building cohorts or I want to ask questions, I always need to go to two different places. I need to go and to the condition and to the observation to find this thing. We may know that, but I'm afraid that many people that will be using this data don't have an idea. So I think what we need to keep in mind is that we need to keep this very, very simple for the people that will be using the map data. And I don't think we're doing that right now. I think we're making it very complex.
Okay, just trying to find hands that are up. Thank you, Red Sky. I think that's helpful too. Lots to consider. It has been a really great discussion today. I really appreciate it. I think it's good that we're kind of shifting from the high level approaches to getting into the weeds about some of the things we want to specify. We're down to like 2 or 3 minutes, and so I'm thinking, Stephanie, that maybe we can just continue this next time, because what you've been talking about has been, one of the nice things about having use cases is it is thought-provoking, and we've got some, again, into the weeds a little bit to think about how we're doing some of this. So there are a couple of things I'm going to follow up with from here. I'm going to send the links for the reminder for those of you who have not commented on the protocol or the proposal yet. I'm going to put the CDM version 6 conduct table in an Excel file so we can start thinking about and commenting on that asynchronously, because we're not going to have all the time we want to be able to discuss it on the calls. And then I'm also going to look at how many meetings we have between now and the workshop, and maybe try to propose what we want to get in, and then get some feedback from you on topics of things we want to make sure we cover before we have the global symposium. Okay, so that's my summary. Any last minute comments before we hop off and close the meeting?
Sorry about that. I tried to explain the intro, and the intro took longer than actual content you wanted me to.
But it was really helpful. I'm glad we did that. It provoked a lot of good discussion.
Okay. And the workshop is happening on Thursday, is that correct?
Yeah, it's the last
in October?
day. Last day. It's like the last day, the last workshop of the day. So hopefully people are not interested enough to stick around.
So I have conflict in the beginning of the week, so I'll go to the other one, and then I have to attend the B2AI meeting. So I'll go to that one and then try to be there by Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. Looking forward to getting to discuss this in person again. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll be staying in touch in between meetings. Thanks again.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Nicole.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Yes, thank you.
Yes,